Hi, continuing from the previous session, I'd like to delve a little bit more into time and the relationship with self-healing of our traumas. Seems a bit of a stretch. First of all, time. I mentioned time before. Now is time. Right now, I'm here. Whatever time is, it's now. And what time actually refers to is to the movement within this third dimension of objects from A to B. Anything that moves from A to B, time is our perception of that event within the now. So it's subjective in a way, right? This is why we've got the theory of relativity about someone who's over here, someone who's traveling at the speed of light, and a difference occurs. I don't know if any of that's true, but nevertheless. So time is now. What that means is we cannot go back in time. What has already happened within this third dimension has already happened. Objects have moved in a certain direction, they've moved. You can't go back because they've already moved. However, from the perspective of soul, I'll call it the soul dimension. It's not really the soul dimension, it's all one dimension. But for our little brains to make sense of these things, we'll say it's that separate dimension. It isn't, it's just a higher frequency. Beyond the physical realm, and which is another way of saying a low vibrations. So from that perspective, it means that their sense of time is much greater and further than our little subjective experience. So from the point of view of soul, the past and the present, past to us, the extended present, our past, it's all one. And yet, this is the thing, that whichever angle you look at it from, whether you look at it from our angle or a higher angle, this moment of time, the movement has already occurred. And what that actually says is that the past is fixed and the future is potential. It hasn't happened yet. And so that raises a number of interesting issues. My sense of time is different from a dog or from a fly or from the quantum realm. We move at different speeds, different vibrations. So if I take it back to the cataclysm, I'm always talking about the cataclysm, I'll bring it back to the cataclysm. If I cannot predict the future because it's yet to come and it's all in a state of potential, then how can Charlie possibly predict what will happen with regards to the sun, or with regards to this little break in the Kali Yuga, whereby we've got this 15 years worth of energy that's come into this part of the galaxy? And the way to look at that is that just like the life of a fly in comparison to the life of a human, they're so exponentially different. So our relative life of 100 years compared to the movement of the planets and their interactions is the equivalent of a couple of weeks for them. So what Charlie is actually doing is looking forward in time a couple of weeks. For us, it's nearly 21 years. For Charlie, it's only a couple of weeks. And what makes it predictable is that in the universe, in all the objects out there in space, they all move in set patterns. If you had the maths, you could do that. You could predict where they're going to be at a certain time. So to a certain extent, which this is how we use astrology as well, so to a certain extent we can do some sort of prediction as to the likely outcome of the future. And of course there is always the black swan element, whereby you just cannot predict everything. There are too many bodies in our universe, way too many bodies in our galaxy, and every single body that moves in space has an effect on every other body around it. So predictions, 100% prediction accuracy is impossible. However, as far as Charlie is concerned, predicting what's going to happen to the Earth 2 weeks from now, from the point of view of cosmology, the cosmos, is almost, what they call it, a lame duck, I don't know what they call it. Anyway, it's almost a certainty. We're talking about, so Charlie's giving it a 97% certainty. The true humans, are giving it closer to a 99% certainty. And they've committed to that because they've got their ships around this planet. Well, in this solar system. So there you go. What do I know? All my imagination. And I'm as fallible as the next, right? I've got an ego just like everybody, so I'm fallible. Having said that, we're just going to go along with this. So that's the story of time, right? That the future, and to predict a human being, their movements, what's going to happen, is even harder, because with nearly 8 billion people on this planet, with people living in big cities of 5, 10, 15, 20 million plus in some of them, the possibility of the black swan, something unexpected hitting you, affecting you, is exponentially greater. So there is no way for the soul dimension to truly project forward in time exactly what's going to happen to any one individual. Now, I've been to really good tarot cards reader, and the best tarot card reader I ever went to was able to predict accurately 2 weeks into the future for some big events for me. Pretty good up to 3 months for major events which coincided astrologically. And after 6 months, it was just a flavor of what she'd said. I could see what had been described, but it wasn't quite the same. But I could see the flavor, because we're constantly interacting with others and we're affected in the world. So prediction's really hard. Now, what Charlie said to me is that the soul dimension is working, because bear in mind, the soul dimension, they have a much better breadth of the now, right? So from 8,500 years into the past, they forward plan for what might possibly happen in this particular lifetime at this particular moment. And this is a continuous, so our souls, they have an agenda, and their agenda is to be in charge, for their ego to listen to what they're saying. Because this world is not about the ego, this world is about the soul. The ego is just a necessary object required for experience within this dimension, at this level. And so there's an awful lot of planning. We're talking planning in previous lifetimes, as in like who are you going to genetically intertwine with, and then the parents and the grandparents, all of that is taken into account. You know, you're hoping that certain people will come together and have a baby. If not, plan B. And it's always one step, one step, one step. Constantly planning, constantly. So, you know, I don't know about you, but my life has been guided. I've met so many people who have, at a certain moment in my time, been there for me to help me onto my next step. I still suffered. I still went through terrible pains, you know, a whole lot of stuff. But every pain, every experience pushed me forward in a certain direction. My unhappiness, my depression, my loneliness, my physical pains, physical damages, all the time pushing me in a certain direction, to have certain experiences, to question, to begin to find out, to be desperate enough to want to find out, to want to heal myself. So I begin to search, to look, to experience, to go here. And then there are moments when suddenly there's these people there, and they're crucial. You don't know it at the time. I didn't know it at the time. But in hindsight, I'm going to have to move because Turkey's getting around. Don't want Turkey getting all the way to my feet. Right. So these are crucial experiences which we need to have for those of us, and there are so many of us these days, who need to wake up. Some of us need to wake up to help others. Others just need to wake up and to be helped in that waking process. And my job is to help others to wake up. But before I could wake others up, I have to wake myself up. And I tell you what, waking up is the hardest thing. You think it isn't, but it is. It is. Because our heads are so full of stuff, we don't question. We question nothing. We accept everything they tell us. But those who tell us things shot themselves in the foot in the year 2000. And they shot themselves in the foot in the year 2020. They're still shooting themselves in the foot more and more frequently. And so more and more people are starting to wake up from their days. They still don't know who they are. They still don't really know where they are. They're still confused, but they are waking up, and just at the right time. And this is what matters. Anyway, so enough of the party political broadcast. So here we are now, and our souls have been pushing us, all of us who are ready, okay? And all of this has been pre-planned, but it's not an exact science. There are too many variables. Our lives are too short. Too many things are happening. But within that, we are being guided. And what we need is to listen to our hearts, to hear the prompts from our soul. The problem is the head gets in the way, and the emotions have been held in check for so long that the heart doesn't get much of a look in. There's too much rubbish in the way. So I keep saying the same things. Too much emotional intensity that needs to be experienced, too many suppressed emotions. How do we do this? How do we clear? because my past has happened. I cannot change my past. My experiences have now become my memories. I have experiences in my body and they're fixed, but my memory is not fixed. My memory, first of all, is subjective. What I experienced in the past is not necessarily the truth, is what I believe to be the truth. So in NLP, they've got a phrase called reframing. Basically, you reframe your past. But to do this, effectively, you can do all manner of things, but to do it effectively, to do it so that it works, to do it so that we change, we first of all need to be able to connect with the memories of the past. And that's no easy feat because it's all locked in the subconscious. Memories to do with suppressed emotions are locked away in the subconscious, and they're locked away because we don't want to know. How do you get in touch with something you don't want to know? You think you want to know, but there's a part of you that says, no, this is too painful. It doesn't even say, no, this is too painful. It just shuts you up. It diverts you, it distracts you, so that you cannot focus. You go woolly-headed. So that's the first challenge, is to connect with the memories. This is what I've said before. You can write, you can go to someone like me who has the ability to get you to connect with certain times in your past and elicit those memories. But even once you connected with those memories, you've now got to experience the emotions from the past, which are painful. And those emotions are somatized in the muscles of the body. So now we've got the journey or the job to, as well as being aware of the emotions of the past, which we're now eliciting in the present, is to connect them within our body. Usually, more often than not, is somewhere along the chakric centers where we have the big emotional blockages, the biggies. There's loads of little ones all over the place, but the biggies, because the nervous system, from the legs, the arms, it all goes into the spine, right? It flows up the spine towards the head. And along that process, we have what we call the chakras, which may or may not be a solid thing. I mean, there are certain nodes within the nervous system up the spine. You could say those are the chakras. I honestly don't know. The likeliest thing, but it's not necessarily the truth. But nevertheless, the chakras at one level, they're real as an energetic issue. And there's a blockage, and that needs to be released. Sometimes we actually need to work with the chakras, and I actually have a number of sounds which Charlie tells me when to give people to do, and that helps to release that blockage. It doesn't do it in one session, because you cannot just go from 0 to 100 just like that. Emotional intensity has to be earned. What I mean by this is you gotta suffer. I don't mean in a sadomasochistic way, but you've got to experience pain, emotional pain, physical pain, mental pain, and you need to stay in there. And gradually you get stronger. And as you get stronger, your ability to connect with this increases. Anyway, so let's assume you've done a fair bit of work, you're now there. So you've connected with the memory, you connected with the emotion, and you can do this by writing as well, which I've shared with you before. So you connected with the emotion, and now you ask yourself, where is the pain? Where is the tension in me? Somewhere in your body. there will be a tension. And one way to help yourself is to say, well, what's it feel like? What's the structure? We engage our imagination. I've shared before. We need imagination for this process. So, and visualization. You have to be able to visualize your body. You have to be able to allow your imagination to help us to do this. So we connect with the imagination as well. What's the structure like? Sharp, dull, raspy, gooey, whatever it is. So you allow your imagination to give you information. And as you do that, you bring forth all the times in your life when you've experienced this emotion. Because these emotions, they repeat themselves. The emotions that we have suppressed, the biggies, they repeat themselves at X amount of years intervals. We keep repeating the story because we are desperately trying to break away from it. And so we find people in our lives who will remind us of that story. And so we go through suffering again and again. Eventually we sort of get the hang of it. But that is what happens. So we remind ourselves of all these times what's going on inside me. We experience that tension, we build it till it becomes excruciating. And then it releases by itself. And with the release of the tension, we can now release the memory from the past. How can you release the memory? You can't release it, not really. But we can change it. We can reframe the memory. We can change how we remember that event. We can, or rather, not we, but how our brain interprets. The brain cannot differentiate between my memory of the past and a memory I create of my past. It's all one and the same to my memory, right? So I generate a memory which is emotionally more powerful than the initial one, but in a positive way. And this is how we release trauma within a human being. This is how it's done. It's not rocket science, but it does take time, it does take effort, and you do have to be willing to do what it takes. So, I think I'll stop there. Come back next time and we'll talk about forgiveness, because that's part of the whole setup of how do we release. Okay, forgiveness is crucial. So I'll come back to that next time. All the best. Before I forget, please do me a favor, hit the like button. All the best for now. Bye bye.